Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the BIPAC Monday Brew. And we have several things to talk about this week. And the first is sort of a review of what happened in the big Democratic landslide election from the previous week in, of course, New York City, New Jersey, and Virginia. And there's some very interesting patterns here on the turnout. And if you look at New York City, they had a 79% increase in turnout over the election from 4 years previous, which was 2021, of course. 79%. So that tells you had a surge there to elect Zoran Mondami, obviously coming from the younger people, coming from more of the hard left. In New Jersey, and again, we saw big polling problems in New Jersey with Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican nominee. This is the third consecutive time the polls have missed very badly when Ciattarelli has been on the ballot. They've underpolled him in the first two elections. In this one, they overpolled him. While they thought this one looked like it was a toss-up heading into Election Day, it proved to be anything but. And it was a landslide for the Democrats with about 57% of the vote. But the turnout there was up 22% over 2021. And so that again shows the same type of pattern in New York where you have more of the Democrat or left faction coming out in greater numbers. Virginia was much different, however. And it's interesting that you see some very different turnout patterns, yet that resulted in the same result in the election. And Virginia's turnout was only 2.3% higher than it was in 2021. So we had New York 79% higher, New Jersey 22% higher, Virginia just 2% higher. And the other interesting thing is that the reason it was a landslide, and the polling was correct here, but it really came out a little bit differently than what was expected, particularly when looking at the early votes, which it looked like Republicans were doing pretty well on the early vote. So if the turnout didn't increase greatly and the Republicans did well on early vote, the only answer is that Republican turnout on election day was poor. And so not only did Abigail Spanberger win by probably a larger margin than what you would have guessed, and particularly so from looking at early votes, but it probably cost him the attorney general's race as well. So interesting pattern there. Three different, very different turnout patterns in those three elections. Yet it all ended up being the same result, a Democratic landslide. So next, let's move on to the state of Michigan. There's a new poll out from the Rosetta Stone organization, polling firm, and this is an independent poll, not paid for by any candidate. And it shows Republican former Congressman Mike Rogers, who you'll remember lost the 2024 Senate race by just 19,006 votes out of over 5 million cast. So it was an extremely close election that allowed then Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin to win that Senate race barely over Mike Rogers. The new poll shows Rogers actually doing very, very well in the Michigan Senate race, which will be one of at least the three top races in the country, being the open Michigan seat, the open North Carolina seat, and the incumbent protection seat for the Democrats in Georgia. Those three really, I think, capsulize where we're headed on the Senate races. So the Michigan race, Mike Rogers up beyond the margin of error versus all three of the Democratic major candidates there. And the Democrats have a problem here. And the Republicans have the same problem in Georgia. And that is that they're going to have a very difficult primary among three candidates: Congresswoman Haley Stevens, State Senator Mallory McMorrow, and the former health director for Wayne County, Abdul El Sayed. All three are raising substantial amounts of money. All three are going to be credible. All three have a base. But the Democrats' problem is this is going to get, I think, nasty and hard fought. And it's not going to be decided until August the 4th. So this gives Rogers a long time for open field running. And this poll shows he's making the most of it, as he is ahead individually of all three of those Democratic candidates by beyond the margin of error. So this is certainly one to watch. Georgia, though, the Republicans have that same problem, although their primary and likely runoff will be decided by June 16th. And that is, they have three candidates running for the Senate: Congressman Mike Collins, Congressman Buddy Carter, and Derek Dooley, the former University of Tennessee head football coach, whose father was the legendary Georgia football coach Vince Dooley. So that race won't be decided, as I mentioned. A May primary, very likely a June runoff, and then the winner takes on Senator John Ossoff, who will be fighting for a second term. And this will be another tight race in Georgia. And Ossoff is the top fundraiser in the whole country of any race at this point in time and has millions of dollars in the bank and will have many millions more by the time the Republicans have a nominee. So interestingly, critical Senate races in Michigan and Georgia, and both parties have the same problem, except in different states. And finally, today, we see some action maybe occurring in Western Maryland. You'll remember that former Congressman David Trone, who ran for the Senate in 2024 and spent $62 million of his own money. Remember, he was the founder of what is the Total Beverage chain of retail stores now, and he spent 62 million of his own money and lost the Democratic primary. Apparently now he is making some calls and testing the political waters to see if he might have a chance to unseat the woman who succeeded him in the 6th District congressional seat in Maryland, April McClain Delaney. So this would be very interesting to see if he wanted to try to come back to regain his old seat and to see how well he might do against a new Democratic incumbent. Now remember, Ms. Delaney's husband, John Delaney, held the seat before Trone. He ran and was elected for 3 terms, but he left in 2018 so he could run a long shot campaign for president in 2020, which didn't turn out too well for him. So that's where Trone became a member for the 6th District. Then he leaves in 2024 to try to run for the Senate. And Mr. Delaney's wife, April McClain Delaney, wins the seat and is now the sitting member. So this could be a very interesting Democratic primary challenge if it were to come to fruition. And we will see quite a few Democratic primary challenges of incumbents and in open seats around the country in this election cycle. There are a lot of them, and it is really going to be a factor in determining the outcome of the 2026 elections. So with that, we'll see you next week on another edition of the BIPAC Monday Brew.